Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film another Q&A session with the awesome questions that all of you asked me when I reached 3,000 subscribers. So I've been slowly working my way through these, and I figured it was time for another installment. And this particular section is going to be about books and reading in general, I think with some Booktube questions thrown in. So let's just get to it. Azurika asked 5 different questions. So, four questions. And so let's just get into it. Question 1 is, if you could choose an author to be the ghostwriter of your hypothetical memoir or novel, who would that be? And I would choose, this was a hard question, I had to think about it, and I choose Stephen King. And the reason why I think he would be a good person to write like either a novel about my life or a memoir about my life is because he writes characters so well, and he especially writes main characters so well. And as I'm a lifelong resident of the state of Maine, I think he would do a good job. Plus, I really like his characters, so I would love it if he would write a story about me. I don't think it would be very interesting, but he could try. And then question 2 is, which favorite book holds its position the longest, and what age did you discover it? So I am choosing Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder, and any of the books in this Little House series could be chosen for this. I don't know when I first had these books read to me. My mother is a big fan of the series, and I'm sure that these were read to us. I first remember reading them on my own when I was in probably first grade, so like maybe 6 years old, and I've read and reread them throughout my life. I love the Little House books, and they are very comforting reads for me and very nostalgic reads for me. And so, you know, this book has been in my life pretty much in my entire life, so love them. Then question 3, a memoir or nonfiction book that's similar to Lab Girl by Hope Jahren, which is one of my favorite nonfiction books. And so for this one, I am recommending A Lab of One's Own, One Woman's Personal Journey Through Sexism in Science by Rita Colwell, PhD, and Sharon Birch McGrane. And this book is all about what it says on the tin. And Rita Colwell was a female scientist in the early part of the 20th century. And this is her story of how that career went and how sexism influenced her career. And so it touches on a lot of the same things that Hope Jahren talks about in her memoir about being a woman scientist and what that's like. I will say that Hope Jahren writes with a lot of humor, and this book was not like humorous. So the tone of the book is different, but the subject matter is very similar, very readable, and also just extremely compelling and interesting if you're interested about women in science. So definitely A Lab of One's Own. And then question 4, which author are you interested in personally besides just his or her books? And like probably most of them. I would say this was a really hard question because I am really interested in a lot of different authors. Some off the top of my head that I really find fascinating, would love to know more about them, would be like Ruth Ozeki. I love her novels. Roxane Gay is one of my favorite nonfiction writers of all time. Would really love to like meet her in person. I mean, so many. I can't even, like, I'm overwhelmed by trying to think about David George Haskell, one of my favorite science writers of all time. Would love to meet him and get to know him more. Like, especially folks that write science nonfiction, I'm very fascinated by their story and how they get into what they do. So then let's see here. The Untrained Librarian asks, what were some of the biggest challenges I faced with my Booktube channel over the years? And I would say for me, like the first thing was getting comfortable with the format, speaking into a camera and like talking to people talking to myself basically, but talking to people through this medium. That was, you know, it was a good exercise. I think it's a skill set that can be transferred to a lot of different areas of your life. So I think that was uncomfortable at first. But I think the biggest thing for me is the scheduling and finding time to do it. Like, I am, you know, I'm work full time. I am a parent and a grandparent. I have other commitments in my life, as we all do. And I just want this for a hobby. I find myself at times like trying to squeeze in time to make videos and edit videos and all the accompanying tasks that go along with producing videos for Booktube. But the the joy I get out of doing it far outweighs the problematic aspects of it. But I also have found that I've made a commitment to like just making this really easy on myself. Like I've made the commitment that this is not going to be like, I'm not doing this for money. So like I need to do it on my own schedule. I am not a person that puts a video out on a regular schedule every week. I do it as I can, and I do some editing, but I'm not like super into it. And so I don't like I don't make amazing videos like other folks do. I don't script videos. Like I've just decided that I'm going to make it as easy on myself as possible. And because I want to still have lots of time for reading, that's my primary joy in life as terms of a hobby. So I don't want to like lose time for reading by doing booktube making, video making as well. So that's I think the challenge for me was like coming to my own understanding about what I wanted this to be for myself, like to not put pressure on myself about how to do booktube, and to try, like, I don't pressure myself in any way about subscriber counts or none of that. Like I am here celebrating getting to 3,000 subscribers, but it wasn't like I didn't have a goal to get to 3,000 subscribers. It just happened. And I'm happy that it happened. And I'm happy that there's so many of you that are interested in what I have to say, but like, it wasn't something that I was striving for. So, I just try to keep it relaxed. And that's basically been, I guess, the biggest thing I had to learn was to keep it relaxed for myself. Louise P. 1962 asks, what's the first book you remember reading, and what's the book that really turned you on to reading if it wasn't that first one? So I remember, like, my mother always read to us, myself and my younger sister. Like, she read to us from the time we were, probably babies. I don't remember that, but like I have very strong memories of being read to when I was a child. And so I've always loved books. And I can remember, before school, before I learned to read, like having books and like trying, like pretending I could read, but basically just having memorized the stories because my mother had read them to me so much. And the one that I remember the most clearly was the one where I announced to my mother that I had taught myself to read. And that was the fable, The Milkmaid and Her Pail. I had my grandfather's old reading primer, and that was one of the stories in it. And it was like, I know I just memorized the words from her reading it to me. And I remember very proudly announcing, "Oh, Mom, I've taught myself to read. Listen to me read this story." And that was before I started school. And so that was the one that I first remember reading, quote unquote. But then the one that really turned me on to reading, I'm going to go back to my previous answer, Little House books, Little House in the Big Woods. Like, I was always a reader before that, but this was like the first chapter book that I remember reading. And like being a young child, I was, like I said, only in first grade. Like I remember being like just so tickled that this world had opened up to me, that I could read chapter books. And so then therefore, like, the sky was the limit. Like the school library, the bookmobile, like all of these avenues of finding books were now open to me. And I was so thrilled. So this was the gateway drug for me for reading. This is Scally Dandling about the book. Thanks, Roz. And this is, how has my reading changed over my time on Booktube? Anything that I'm particularly happy to have read or done as a result of having a channel? Yes. Oh, yes. My reading has definitely changed since I've been on Booktube. I think I started the channel in it's been like 6 years, I think. Like 2018, maybe, somewhere in there is when I started. And my reading has opened up so much since I've been on Booktube. Like, I've always been an eclectic reader. Like, I've always read widely across all genres, but now I just feel like I've been exposed to so many more books and stories that I never would have heard about, just because where I live is a very small place, and therefore our, the sources of places to get books around me is also associatively small. And so now I feel like I've particularly translated literature, world literature from other parts of the country, stuff like that I hear about now, and I get exposed to it and so want to read it. The other thing I will say is I've really become committed to the nonfiction side of my reading since I've been on Booktube. And so I always read, in the mix of books, I always read nonfiction, but now I like to focus on it. I got involved with the Book Naturalist book club with Doris, and that has like really focused my reading on nature nonfiction and science nonfiction, which was always a big love of mine. But now I'm like way more focused on it than I ever was before, and finding new authors and diverse authors in that genre. And that's been like such a great journey to be on. The other thing I would say would be the Booktube Prize. Like the Booktube Prize has opened my horizons to so much reading that I never would have found on my own. Like the stuff that I read for the Booktube Prize, like a lot of it is not stuff I would ever have either heard about or picked up if I had heard about it. So, you know, some of them are duds, but many of them are worthwhile and exciting and new favorites sometimes. So yeah, I'm really happy that Robert started that, the Booktube Prize, and that I, you know, signed on to participate, and it's just been such a joy to be a part of that. And the other thing I will say is like other people hosting reading themes, read-alongs, like so many things that I've participated in over the years. Like early on, and I don't even remember who hosted it. Somebody hosted a read-along of The Count of Monte Cristo. Now, I probably would have read The Count of Monte Cristo on my own at some point because it was on my list of, you know, recommended books for college-bound students that I was working my way through at the time. But I would not have gotten nearly as much out of it as I got out of reading it with a group and having a schedule and having discussion about it. It was fantastic. And there's just been so many instances of that over the years, whether it's, you know, like this month, March, where there's so many different reading themes that we're, you know, can engage in and find books in, and then therefore broaden your horizons. So that's all been fabulous. Teresa 709 asks, is there a genre you really don't like? Is there a topic in nonfiction that you don't like to read about? So those two questions. So let's, first, a genre that I don't really like. I mean, I really am not fond of poetry. I know, I'm sorry. I am such a peasant, but it's not for me really. I mean, there have been some poetry collections that I have read and liked, but I don't, as a rule, I don't read poetry very often. I don't love horror anymore, although when I was a teenager, I was like way into it and I read it all the time. And of course, I still do read Stephen King, as people keep pointing out to me. He does write horror, but because I know his writing so well at this point in my life, like he just doesn't feel like a horror writer to me, because I know his style of writing well enough. Like yes, he writes about some gross things, but I don't know. I just don't find his writing to be like stuff that's going to keep me up at night. And then is there a topic in nonfiction that I don't like to read about? I don't like business books in general. And I don't really like self-help books, although I have read self-help books that I have found useful in my life. But like, I do not like what I would term woo-woo self-help books that I guess are more about like internal feelings and emotions and things like that. Like that's just not, I find that to be not stuff that I can connect with in a really good way. So yeah, those ones I generally avoid as well, although I will pick one up on occasion if I hear one recommended that sounds interesting or is specific to something that I feel like I need to learn more about. And then Teresa also asks, what's my favorite activity to do besides reading? Reading's really my favorite activity to do. I will choose reading over almost any other thing that I can pick. But I also I'm a planner, so I do a bullet journal, and I really enjoy spending time with my bullet journal. I'm not creative like some folks out there, but I do spend some time. I like being organized. I'm a very oriented person, so I do enjoy spending some time with my planner. I also am a scrapbooker, although I don't spend as much time as I probably should scrapbooking, but it is an activity that I particularly enjoy with my mother and some other close friends and family members that we scrapbook at least, several times a year. And in fact, I have a scrapbooking trip coming up. That's an annual trip that we all take together, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So those are really my creative outlets. I don't really do any other crafting type activities other than planners and scrapbooks. And I do like outdoor activities. So I'm a very outdoor kind of gal. I like being outside, and I like boating and hiking and spending time at my camp at the lake and all the activities that go around that sort of, that sort of time. That's all, something I really enjoy. Tanya M asks, what are your favorite nonfiction books? And is there a book that I love that is not well known? Favorite nonfiction books. I mean, all of these behind me. But let me grab one here if I can. Yes. My absolute number one favorite nonfiction book of all time is this one. It's Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. This is medicine and what matters in the end. And it's all about how we approach end-of-life care and whether or not the Western medicine style of like doing everything that science will allow us to do to keep someone alive is really the best outcome that we can hope for people at end of life. And this book opened my eyes up to a lot of different issues, and it was super important, and I would highly, highly recommend it to anyone. This book should be read by everyone because we are all going to experience aging and getting to the end of life. And I'm sure that we all have people in our lives that are also going to approach the end of their lives. And how you deal with that and how we handle it as a culture is something we should all be thinking about. So this book is super important, excellently written. Atul Gawande is like just an awesome writer. And I've read almost everything that he's published at this point, I think. And I really hope he writes some more stuff because he's great. A book that I love that is not well known is one of my favorite authors, and this is David George Haskell. This is the first book of his that I've read. I've since read his two other books. This is The Forest Unseen, A Year's Watch in Nature. David George Haskell is a scientist from the southern part of the U.S., and in this book, he examines a 1 meter plot of the forest for an entire year and talks about his observations of the wildlife, the insect life, the plant life, all the different aspects of this 1 meter square plot of forest. And it's fascinating. His writing is so beautiful. He is just an elegant writer. And I just admire so much how he talks about nature and how he brings it to life. He's really, it's really important to him that we recognize the connection between humans and nature, because so often human activities or human desires or human, how humans live in the world is discussed separately from the rest of nature. And he does not accept that premise. He's very much into this idea that we are all interconnected and we cannot separate humans from the rest of nature. And I think it's wonderful. And I wish more people would read his writing because I think he is such an excellent advocate for the environment and why we should care about a lot of different things that we don't care about. He's a wonderful writer. So please, if you have not yet tried David George Haskell, please do pick him up. And I have to thank Doris for introducing me to this author because I never would have found him on my own. And then I'm sorry, I am probably going to butcher this handle, but Xanthipikipu 2531 asks, what is my favorite recent contemporary novel? And I would say that I don't read a whole bunch of contemporary novels, but this one I did read in the last half year or so. This is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. It's been everywhere. I love this book. I thought it was really well done. I really connected with the main character, and the setting really resonated with me as a resident of a rural area that's also struggling with opioid epidemic. This book is fantastic. So yeah, I am joining the chorus of people who loved Demon Copperhead. So that was a favorite recent contemporary novel. They also ask, what is my favorite TV show and what is my favorite movie? I do not watch very much TV at all. But I would say that a favorite TV show for me is The Amazing Race. I always watch it when it's on with my daughter and my husband, and we just have a blast talking about all the different places that they travel to around the world in the course of this reality TV show. And it is the source of my a lot of the items on my bucket list for places that I want to travel someday in my life. So love The Amazing Race and hope that there'll be a new episode or a new season coming soon. And then my favorite movie of all time is The Breakfast Club. I am an 80s girl, and I am a Breakfast Club junkie. I love that movie. It's so good. And I know that if you really pick it apart for today's day and age, there's a lot of problems with The Breakfast Club, but it's near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love it. And so I think I've gone on more than 20 minutes, so I'm going to stop this particular segment here, and I will be back with another episode to get through some more questions soon. Thank you all very much for your wonderful questions. I hope you've enjoyed my answers. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read. I will talk to you later.